Thanks for joining us on Coast to Coast Pest Talk.
All right, so I was listening to our past episodes, going through the historical archives of the last year and a half, 2 years of doing this, and and as I was going through those, there was a lot. There's been so much like good content in those episodes. Holy cow!
Yeah.
I was going through them, and it was when I said it was really dense. It was like not fluff stuff. It was like really dense stuff that if you were to listen to that stuff and try to implement it or work on it, like you'd be doing some serious self-development for sure.
Yeah, that's nuts. So we're coming up on 2 years of podcasting.
Oh my God, that's insane.
You know, Andy, they told me that if I did this for long enough that we would make a lot of money.
Who told you that?
I think you did. I mean,
No,
somebody...
it was not me. Oh my God. Yeah. No, there's no money being made on this.
It seems like we're losing money here.
It's a money suck for sure. Yeah, but you know what? It's funny when I listen to them. Like, I think I don't want to speak for you, but I think you've developed a lot.
Oh yeah, holy smokes!
Oh, if you look May 2023 versus where you're going to be May 2025, I think there was a lot. As I was listening through to these old episodes, there was a lot. I could hear the Gabe Seymour like aha moments happening. Like, oh yeah, that's like, oh, I'm going to need to look at that. There was a lot of that going on.
Yep, sounds about right.
That's cool.
They still happen.
Good. Well,
with the core values.
Oh my gosh, yeah. That was pretty crazy. I got that LinkedIn message from a fellow, and he was like, "Oh my God, it was a gut punch. I had to redo my whole thing." How was it? It's been a couple weeks since then. How was it for you? Have you thought more about it, or have you like tried to implement something with that?
Yeah. I've sort of, as a temporary measure right now, I've kind of unofficially implemented 2 of the core values that you brought up: the love your neighbor and hard work is good.
Okay, nice.
So that's been cool. So I haven't even made that like an official thing for the team yet.
Right.
But I've been in how I've been thinking through even just decisions for the future and like what kind of branding choices, what are we going to spend money on for 2025? I'm thinking more in those categories now, which is really cool.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm just kind of dipping my toe in it.
So do you think that it streamlined those decisions or it just informed them more? Did it like...
It did what core values are supposed to do, and what most people intend for them to do, I think, on some level, which is giving you a framework by which to know what is right or wrong for your business, right, at a given time.
Yeah.
So I've already seen it just help streamline that side of things, where it's like how am I gonna staff, right? Well, I'm wanting to grow kind of the restoration side of my company. If I'm literally gonna have like a hard work is good, then I'm gonna staff intentionally to ensure that I can actually sell those services and that I can just go all in. Like if it's gonna be part of my core value, right? As a company, it's just, I don't know, it's given me sort of the green light to be able to be like, yeah, this is going to be a part of who we are.
Yeah. Wow. It's funny because I felt like when you say green light, that was the feeling that I had when we sort of really started to refine and get like our real direction together. I said to someone, I can't remember who it was, but I said to someone that it was like, before that, you're kind of fumbling along and there's fog, right? And you're in a forest and you're trying to navigate. and you go really slow because you're going to bump into trees and you're going to fall over rocks and you're like, oh my God. So you're like kind of picking your way along slowly, slowly. Sometimes you try and go fast and smack straight into a tree and fall over and you're like, oh my God. But like after that, it's like you lift that fog and then you have clear vision for a lot longer distance. And now you can jog. Like you see the obstructions and the problems and the things that are going to trip you up, and so you can really make progress, real fast, and be sure that you're like going in the right direction, and that was big for us.
Yeah, totally. And like just to continue down that analogy, which I think is great, it's like no matter which direction you face, there's going to be trees that you're going to smack into if there's fog, right? So.
Sure.
I think giving that clarity, it helps you because you can see further out. It's like, well, you could take the left road or the right road. Maybe it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, right? But it's like just knowing what way you're going to face, right?
Yeah,
We're going to
for
face
sure.
this way and focus on here. Yeah, it gives you that longer vision.
Well, and I think to belabor an analogy, because we love to do this, just like let's take this all the way. So for me, it was sort of like you're on the edge of the forest, right? And if you just look to your left, there's a big open field, just clear sailing, and you're like 2 tree rows away from that, but you don't know that. And so you're just like lumbering along the edge of the forest, banging into trees. You're like, you could take like 10 steps to the left and just, it's a wide open pasture. And like, until you have that clarity, you don't know. And so you're like, oh my God, everything's difficult. And it clears right up. Not that you get your values together and then like everything's perfect, but it does clear up a lot for you.
Do you think that's because on some level you stop constantly working against yourself? Like you're not having your values fight against each other all the time.
Probably, and you're probably less likely to have, like, if you don't know what your core is, you're probably a lot more likely to be influenced by other people's opinions and outside, like, hey, you should do this, you should try that, you should do, and they're like telling you, well-meaning, like what you should do. And right. you may be working outside of what your like natural ability or skill or desire actually is, and therein lies the problem. So they're pulling you into like, this has worked for me, so you should do that too. And you try to be someone else, and you never quite fit that mold. And you're not like, once you're being your true authentic self and in business and whatnot, everything smooths out. And it's just figuring that out. But that was some of where we left off before, of how do you figure that out, right? One of the things you had said was someone that can observe what you're doing, right? Was that the thing? Like somebody that you trust, right, to look at your business and say, here. And I was thinking about that, and I think that's probably that's a good one. If you have somebody that knows enough about your business and what you tend to do, that can have that insight and say, you always tend to do this.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought, that can be a good way to go. But man, those relationships are few and far between in my experience. Like, can you think of how many people can you think of that have enough knowledge of your business and who you are that would have the insight to say, here, I think these are like, we have a special situation here where talking over 2 years worth or whatever, I feel like I have a understanding, and you probably have an understanding of our business that most other people wouldn't have.
Right.
But boy, short of that, like, somebody's going to come in, look at your P&L, look at your business, and be like, I think you should do this. And you're like, okay.
Yeah. And that's, I think, the practical reality for most people is that, first off, to our shame, we don't probably let enough people into our lives deep enough, right, to actually get there. But regardless, whether that's right or wrong, I think we're going to have to probably synthesize a group of, so you might have 5 people that they see an aspect, maybe they know you really well personally. And then maybe you have somebody who isn't in your industry, but they're really good at business. And so they're not going to have your industry specific, but maybe they can help you see some things with business. And then you've got some industry, right? And you could maybe synthesize some of them.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how many, with how lonely our whole culture is, right?
Right.
I don't know how many people have anything close to that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's an epidemic of loneliness for sure.
But we
Lack
should
of
definitely
friends.
pursue that, right? I think
Yeah.
that deep friendship, that people that really know,
Right.
they know who you are and what you're about, and
Right, yeah. So when we were working on this, one of the things, it sort of started with us with deciding whether or not we were going to continue to do a service line.
Right.
So we knew we were moving into commercial, and we were deciding like what service lines are we going to cut first.
Yeah.
And we've done a sort of a step down year over year where we're like, okay, we're going to stop doing these services and stop doing these one times and whatever. And we came to one that was we had a monthly program through the season to control spiders along the lake.
Right.
The monthly spider service. And what we put together was we put together for every service line like sort of a matrix of what the customer thought of that service. So like in
Right.
general, like how much was the customer thrilled or not or indifferent to the service, how the technician felt about the service. Did they enjoy doing it or did they not? And then how did the company feel, quote unquote, about it? Like, was it profitable? Was it good for growing the company? Did it achieve the goals we were looking to achieve?
Right.
So when we did this, it was very clear that we had like our monthly spider service. The customers were mostly pleased with it. They were probably middle of the road on it because there was always callbacks and a little bit of spider activity and
Totally.
diminishing returns as you do this service year over year. Customers would be like, well, the first year we went from 1,000 spiders to 100 spiders and they thought it was great. The next year
Right.
you go from 100 spiders to 10 spiders and that's not very good.
Right.
So there's like this diminishing returns. The customers weren't thrilled by it. Technicians didn't love it. It was very routine applications. You're going to the house every month, all exterior treating, blah, blah, blah. And it's funny as I say this, I know that there's a lot of companies that's their whole business model.
Yeah. Right.
Exterior spray monthly or quarterly or whatever, and we never go inside it. Oh, this is the greatest. Our technicians, how they're geared, it wasn't intellectually stimulating enough. Like there wasn't enough meat on the bone to really do anything fun, right?
Mhm.
You're just kind of showing up and spraying.
Yeah.
On the company side, we liked it because it was consistent revenue, so the stability was there. We loved that. Profitability wasn't great. People really didn't want to pay a ton for this. You're not adding a ton of value, so you're in this like march to the bottom for
Yeah.
pricing. So that all those things were like, this is out of here. This is, we're not going to do this service anymore. We did this with other services. And then I started to see that it was kind of showing us what we were about. So the line items, when we looked at each service activity, the ones where customers were thrilled with what we were doing, the technicians liked doing it, and the company was profitable and liked selling those services, those not only were those are areas where we needed to focus and keep those service lines, they pointed towards our differentiation, our real, like what we were really doing well for people that was different, and what we really valued. And we would drill down into those. Okay, why does the technician like this job over this other one? What does he enjoy about doing this? And it's, using our differentiation in service for the customer. And why does the company like this? And in that dynamic, you come out with, because we value these things, because we believe these things, because this is how we want to progress and grow the company. And you can sort of backward engineer into, that's really what we think.
Right.
So that was like some of the first things we got rid of. Mole services, vole services. We nixed those like right off the jump. The spider service went next. A lot of our residential stuff, like we were just like, these aren't really for real. And then we started bolstering the things that we were liking, where we were doing audited accounts and trend reports and high level, IPM programs and problem solving for big commercial accounts. These were things that got us energized. So like,
Mm-hmm.
oh wow, okay, so this is where we're really at. But that's like one little way you can kind of use to get towards what you're really
Yeah.
about.
Well, and I think what that shows, excuse me, um, like we've talked about many times with core value stuff and just a lot of deciding your company direction and stuff. There's an aspect of it that is just figuring out who you are, like what
Yeah,
you are.
yeah,
Like that's just a big part of it. So, and so often we think it's like throwing darts at the board of what should we, and there's an aspect of what should we be, I think. But yeah, like in that, you're figuring out your branding,
sure,
like
yeah,
your personal your company's brand, you're figuring out what that is just based on like, oh, this is what brings the highest value, the highest fulfillment, the highest profit margin.
yep, yep.
That's cool.
Well, and it's hard to look at those ones and you come back with some where the customers aren't super thrilled with it, the technician isn't super thrilled with it, but boy, the company loves it because there's tons of money in it,
Yeah.
and you have to throw those ones away
Yeah.
because that's a recipe for a problem.
Yeah.
Like if it's only profitable, like people are going to be like, well, what's wrong with that? Well, the problem is that you have to put so much into trying to coerce someone to want to do that and to keep those customers on if they aren't totally thrilled and happy with, that you're providing this differentiated service, because you're not. The only one that's happy in that whole scenario is the company and the profitability, and you're going to have no end of nightmares of
Do you
trying
think
to fix it.
though, I think you're totally right, but is there a place um I my mind goes to like some of the heavy door knocking companies
Mm-hmm.
that are very like metrics, like pay for performance almost style. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
which I know you have thoughts about that whole system in general. Um, but what if you have a team full of people who are wired and who are just really monetarily driven, right?
Sure.
And they're like, I don't care. I'll knock doors. I'll do the worst kind of work,
Yeah, yeah.
but if you hand me that paycheck, right? So that's like an interesting,
Uh-huh.
not all businesses are set. I would say most businesses are not set up like that. And most people are not motivated mostly by money.
Sure.
But is there a place for that?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, yeah, I guess it's probably my bias on like that I don't want to I'm not geared that way.
And your team is not.
Yeah. Well, of course,
And
yeah,
you
because I'm going to
built.
build a team, right, that is also not geared that way. But yeah, you're probably right. If you know that, if you're like, hey, we're going to go with all the ones that are the highest profitability, and yeah, go that route. Well, and then herein lies the importance of this. Then you understand what your values are.
That's right.
And
Yep.
then you can go, I'm going to make decisions based on this, understanding here's the consequences of those decisions.
Yep.
I think it's the mismatch that's always the problem. You think
Yeah.
you're one thing and you're actually something else, and you're
Yeah.
operating because you're like, oh no, I'm this thing, and then you're just miserable about it, and you're fighting it all the time. But yeah, no, you're probably right.
Like instead of putting
Yeah.
compassion as one of your core values, you should just put profit.
Yeah, dollar signs.
Just dollar emojis.
Just dollar sign. So the ones that I had the hardest time with, though, like services, were the ones that came back sort of middle of the road across the board,
Yeah.
where you're like, customers are middle of the road on it, technicians are take it or leave it, and the companies kind of take it or leave it. And any ones with those, by the time we got that granular with them, we had already like decided the direction we wanted to take. So then it was a simple thing like, does this reinforce our differentiation and our specialization, or does it not? And if it doesn't, it's gone. Even if we really could be still doing it well enough, if it doesn't help us in what we really want to focus on, we just eliminate it.
Yeah, right. I'm curious. It feels like on some level you have to just jump in. Like think about your in your situation.
Yeah.
You didn't start off just commercial, right?
Right.
But like how do you there's an aspect it feels like where you need to just get reps and
Yeah.
figure out who you are, figure out what your brand is, figure out what your team's going to be like.
Oh, 100%. I completely agree. And I think if you have time in the business and you're doing it, start doing a bunch of different things. It's almost like, actually, it's almost like what we tell kids sometimes they go to college. Just go to college
Right.
and figure out who you are. I mean, that's an expensive way to figure out who you are. I'd probably say don't do that. But in general, like maybe do that in high school. But start with a whole bunch of things and then figure out the ones that resonate with you. I think what we might be bad at is being able to objectively observe our actions and behaviors in any kind of meaningful way.
Yeah.
Like we have a hard time having that separation, stepping back and being like, why did I do that? Why am I drawn to do this thing over that thing? And like really analyze what decisions you're making. And not open to the results. We may have like a preconceived idea of what we want the results to be. Because honestly, we fought this a long time. Like you're supposed to be a traditional pest control company, right? Which means you have to do residential, commercial. Anybody that calls, we're going to do everything, and we're going to add on. At a time we looked for hiring a wildlife guy, and then hiring opening a like home services division that would do repairs, that would do like. You think you have to do everything, right? That's like the traditional. So being open to any possibility is difficult, I think. Like just being like, okay, everything's on the table, and we took a long walk to get there. But yeah, being like sort of open to think differently is scary, for sure.
Yeah. And sorting through, because a lot of times what you think you should do, and I'm not talking from like not like, oh, this is like morally right or wrong.
Right.
Oh, hang on, I just kicked myself out of the meeting here. Okay, what you think you should do, oftentimes is sort of blinding you from the reality of like, what your natural gifting is, or what your inclination is, or something that could bring you way more fulfillment and
Yeah. Now, when you were looking at moving off from your first business doing the mole thing, when you got towards the end of that, how did you come to that decision? Like what you're making a move there and coming off of that business, but you had thought before that, like, hey, I'm going to do this. This is a thing. Like, how did you make that change? Like, what were you valuing when you made that change?
Okay, so with that one, so we hit a point, like I started the mole business straight out of high school.
Oh my God.
And so like I basically launched into like 4 or 5 things. I was doing that part-time. I was teaching music lessons, as was my wife. So we both had a studio. And then I was doing bookkeeping for my father-in-law. For his oil change business, which was that middle chunk. And so as all of them kind of grew naturally as things grow, you get a bunch of referrals for more music students, and you get and I took on another bookkeeping thing, and then the business is growing, and I'm like, all of these are this close to turning into full-time jobs,
Oh God.
And so it was kind of like, for us, it was like, okay, what are we going to do? Like, am I going to teach music? Am I going to do business management stuff? Am I going to run this little startup? And I felt like I had learned a lot of what I was hoping to learn, like starting the brand with the little mole trapping, doing the route work. And the next opportunity kind of gave me, it was basically like, hey, take over the director of operations role. So it was like, learn management, learn leadership stuff. So that was what was appealing for me personally.
So you came full circle though, right back to, I mean, pretty much something similar to the mole trapping, right? Like you diverged from that, you took a different route, and then kind of took not a U-turn, but veered back into that thing. So do you think that was not a mistake to go off from that? but like, was that where your like true passion, what you really valued was that starting a brand and growing a business on your own, but
Right.
maybe didn't really realize how much until you got away from that.
Yeah, because I was kind of thinking, well, I've experienced what it's like to start a little brand. I don't have experience managing a group of managers, and so I felt like I had checked the box.
Okay.
But then when I jumped into pest control, I mean, when we sold the mole business, we were doing like $50,000 a year. I mean, we were like
Okay.
nothing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so now it's like jumping into this and like, okay, now I'm actually built another brand and now trying to actually successfully scale that brand. Like that's a whole separate.
Yeah. Right. Right. So now, does that bring up a point that over time your values evolve, right? Like
Oh yeah.
how you would rate things right now would be differently than say whatever, however many years ago that was with the mole trapping company.
Yes.
Because like now, if somebody was like, "Hey, can I buy pest control?" You're like, "Hell no." Right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's a big divergence from, well, I got this, check the box, I'm going to go off and try something else.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, that's so interesting. And so much of that for me was having kids,
Oh,
right? So like
okay. Yep.
we had kids, a batch of kids between that time. And now like I'm thinking like, how can I equip the next generation? Would they be a part of this and all
Yeah.
that? So yeah, obviously that's been a big factor.
So your evaluation of your goals, or sorry, of your values, should be evolutionary and ongoing and continuous.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting. But probably on some level, they grow like it's like you
Yeah. Yeah.
stand on the shoulders of your previous values
Sure.
almost, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think there should be at least a level where you're ready to admit where your values were not aligned with
Yeah.
reality or the best thing, or I don't know. I don't know what
Right.
that looks like. Or if you
Right.
even because that's the
Yep.
thing. It's
Yep.
not, I'm just like trying to do the right thing, right? And
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
and so right now, for me, doing the right thing is actually the opposite of what I did like 10 years ago,
Yeah.
right? Which is,
Right. Right.
but I felt like I thought I was doing the right thing. I know,
Well,
no,
here,
that's-
here, yeah, here. So here's the thing: is that then it's context dependent a little bit, like
Yes.
because if you look at ours, like we probably went through over 17 years now. We've probably gone through probably 5 or 6 sets of values, and you'd be like, "Oh, you guys are all over the place," and it's not. They're all sort of in a direction,
Yeah.
and every one of them, the moment I got it together, I was like, "That's it, got it, nailed it." And then 2 years later, I'm like, no, it's not right. And so I want to be like, hey, there's one true set of values, and once you get down to that core thing, you're done. You figured it out, and it really is like figuring it out for your contextual existence right now. And as that changes, that will evolve. And we may talk 2 years from now and be like, oh yeah, I was an idiot. I got all these things wrong and changed them. So I think that having that way to continuously observe your actions, see if they align with your goals and vision, and modify those values. Don't get too like set on them, but also don't be too flippant about changing. Don't like flip flop. There's like this weird balance that you have to strike of consistency and stability, but
Yeah.
still dynamic at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yep. Yeah, it's like your values are kind of, it's like, this is the road I'm currently on.
Yeah.
But it's like, there's nothing that says that's not like the only road, right? And so it's like, there's nothing that says that road doesn't then go and like tee into another road and like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now this is the road I'm on, and here's these. Yeah,
Right.
that's so interesting. There's part of me that wishes that I was like smart enough that I could consciously like see that, but I kind of feel like that's just what it is to
Yeah.
be a human is.
I think so.
In the rear view.
I was just gonna say, yeah, you see it behind, and you're like, oh my goodness, and you do the best you can moving forward.
Yeah, but again, to tie that back, that's why we need other people in our life, because I think that they can see where we are now more clearly than we can sometimes. Yeah,
sure. Yeah, that's an excellent point. I've taken to writing a lot. If you don't journal, that's something to start up doing.
Totally.
I like those sorts of things, and I'll actually use our meeting notes as well, meeting minutes from each week, and I'll keep a big binder because it will light up that path. Because if you don't sort of record some of these things, the granularity of your thought process from day to day disappears. And you think you remember things accurately, but you really don't. So if I flop open our my journal or our weekly meeting minutes from a year ago and look at it, it's really interesting because it brings you right back to there, and you're like, oh, my thought process was in this arena, and here's the decisions we were making. These are why I was making those decisions, and then you start to see how far you've progressed from there. But that's a good aid for that, because otherwise you're just floating free, and who knows.
Yeah, it's a great point. It's crazy when you start reading through histories and stuff, how much of history, like the history we know, comes from people's journals.
Yeah, right. Letters and journals, and
it's like a crazy huge amount of it. But yeah, that's same here. I journal not as often as I should, but I mean, I'm journaling every week at least, and it's super helpful. It's cool to look back and just see all of the little micro pivots.
Yes. Well, and that's the thing is when you make a big pivot, it's almost never just one big pivot. Yeah. It's like all these tiny little steps that one leads to the next, and I think it's a great way too to if you have this ability to look back through a journal or meeting minutes or whatever, you'll see recurring themes, and sometimes those recurring themes are pointing you in that direction of this is really important to you. This one aspect is like keeps coming up over and over. And it's like kind of raising its hand. Hey, I'm a thing. Hey, you're worried about this, or you think this is important. Yeah. And if you can sort of recognize that through a mechanism like this, that's a great way, because then you can sort of drill down on that. Oh, I notice that I'm constantly bringing this up or mentioning this or dealing with a pain point. It's recurring over and over again with your team. How come this is a pain point? Oh, I must really value, things going this way or whatever. Start to build that into your values so that that's not a pain point anymore. It's a strength.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. I'm gonna
awesome,
go
man.
Lunch.
Yes, go get some lunch. Say hi to the kiddos and all that, man. All right. I will talk to you next week.
All right. Take care.
Yep. See ya.
You've been listening to Coast to Coast with Andy, can't pronounce his last name, and Gabe Seymour. Join me, Pete Chopin, probably in another 5 years from now when they invite me on again.